Joining us for a discussion on unleashing human potential with AI augmentation. Please welcome to the stage data science executive from Bank of America, Brian Wood. Great to have you, Brian.
Thanks, Rebecca. It's great to be here. This is the name of my presentation. All right, I'm Brian Wood. I'm a data science executive at Bank of America. For about the last 6 to 7 years, I've been focused on natural language processing and artificial intelligence. Prior to that, I've had a variety of roles in analytics and data management, all in the financial industry since 2006. And fun fact for my bio is that I'm an artist. You know, there's a lot of really good presentations at this conference. A lot of them are really technical. Mine's meant to not be technical. But the reason you might want to pay attention is because I have stuff in production, right? Like I do NLP and data science at scale, large enterprise. It's a very challenging thing to do, and that's the perspective I'm going to try and bring to this. So the agenda today is foundation models and generative AI, right? Which is, you know, probably, at least for me and people in the industry, this is every conversation you've had for the last 6 months. Again, I'll give you my perspective on it, but we're not going to break any new ground. We're also going to have a quick art history lesson just to make sure there's something here for everyone. I want you guys that are really technical and already know all this stuff to kind of just stick with me for a second. You're going to get something out of this too. We got a lot of content, but we're going to try and have some Q&A at the end as well. All right, so let's get this stuff out of the way, right? Foundation models. They're these giant models, hundreds of billions of parameters. They can generate text. They can generate images. You know, when I got into this space would be around that BERT dot that you see kind of towards the top right corner, you know, doing more traditional NLP stuff like data extraction, classification, these types of use cases. And, you know, one moment that always kind of sticks with me is July 2020. I was at the beach with some friends and family, and, you know, one of my buddies is a computer scientist named Stephen Ingram, and he had, you know, we were just chatting, and he pulled out his computer and asked me if I had seen this game called AI Dungeon. And I was like, yeah, I've heard of it. I don't really care. It's like a text-based Dungeons and Dragons type thing. And he showed me, it's like, oh, we got this upgrade. It's got GPT-3 in it. It's like, okay, what is this? And you know, he lets me kind of hack around on his laptop for a bit, and I immediately wasn't playing the game. I was just interacting with this chatbot that just seemed like it could do anything, right? It just seemed like magic. And so for me, you know, playing with that in AI Dungeon was kind of the moment that I had where it was like, okay, wow, this is a new, powerful thing. This is going to be important, and this is what I want to start to focus on. So since then, I've been focusing on, you know, how can we introduce this technology into enterprise spaces, you know, get value out of it, you know, ultimately get things into production. One of the reasons I like to bring this slide up is to just show the progress. You know, I think a lot of people, their first encounter with this stuff is, you know, like ChatGPT, and it just feels like magic. It feels like it came out overnight. But, you know, there's obviously, you know, decades worth of work that's been leading up to this, and I think that's important to keep in mind. But yeah, everyone got really excited about it when Chat came out, which kind of leads us to the inevitable question, right? And I know this slide or variations of it have been shown in this conference. My opinion here is that the bubbles burst. We're on our way down here, right? You know, December, January, it was just rapid growth. Everyone was excited. Everyone's freaking out. Around March, I started to just get overwhelmed that things were moving too fast. It was stressful. I'd say since that, it's kind of cooled down. But, you know, I mean, people are excited, right? And we're going to try and talk through why. I think the one thing that I like to point out is, yeah, we're in a hype cycle. The bubble's probably bursting. All of that could change very quickly. But I will say it feels different to me. So if you look at previous hype cycles, think of things like virtual reality, Bitcoin. You know, there was always a lot of smart money betting against it, right? You know, people are like, well, what's the use case for Bitcoin? Or why would I use VR outside of gaming? And all of those are still good questions. They haven't been answered. With AI, I don't hear that, right? Like the detractors of AI will say things like, okay, well, it doesn't have an internal representation of the world that allows it to understand things. It's just a statistical word predictor, right? So the people that are detracting from this are basically just bringing us back down to what the capabilities really are. They're not really questioning the use case. So to me, this is more like the dot-com bubble, right? The people got very excited, but the fact that the bubble burst on dot-com didn't kind of negate the importance of the internet. So I think we might see a little bit of slowdown, but for the most part, this feels real because people aren't questioning the use cases. They're simply questioning the capabilities and how fast it'll be everywhere, right? So, some people are really fringe and they go off into this, AGI, ASI singularity place and going to displace all the jobs in 2 years. I don't believe that, right? It's going to be very much like previous technologies. It's going to take time to implement at an enterprise level. And I think, we'll get there, but I think it's an important technology. So let's find out why, right? Why are people excited? So first off, all right, sometimes you just have to say it out loud to appreciate it, right? We just put the most powerful AI ever created in the hands of tens or hundreds of millions of people, and it has an intuitive user interface. All you have to be able to do is know how to express what you want in natural language. And I think it's going to take time for us to figure out, what all we're going to do with it. But I can't really think of a parallel to this, where you've just come out with something that's this powerful, this accessible, and this widespread. And you see it in the adoption of ChatGPT. I think everyone's aware that, they crossed that million mark, the 10 million mark, faster than other products in history. I think that's all great stuff, but I think the important takeaway here is that this is really powerful technology and it's very accessible. And I think that's driving some of the hype, and I think for good reason. Another thing that's really new here is this is the first technology that's helping us with content generation. Think about it, right? Like writing stuff, making images, a lot of the stuff that this generative AI is doing was previously exclusively for humans. And now it's not, right? Now we have machines that can help us with this. So it's going to take time to figure out all the use cases and to get it widespread, but this is really important, that now we can generate content with AI. We can use this stuff to help us be creative in a way that simply never existed before. All right, this one I really like, all right? And I've got a link here. You guys should definitely check out this study. But it's about call centers that have deployed AI to assist their associates. And what's really interesting is that it's helping the least knowledgeable and least experienced people the most. And I think this is going to be a big deal for enterprise use cases because it's very challenging to onboard people, retain them, get them to build up that knowledge of a company. So if you can put that knowledge into a model that's available to people 24/7, that's going to supplement the traditional training and coaching that they have. So if you don't have access to your manager 24/7 or an expert, you can have this agent here that is, it knows pretty much everything you need to know about the business. So how does it do that, though? I think that's an interesting point. And this is a little hypothetical, but I think the way this works is these language models allow us to codify tacit knowledge in a way that previously wasn't possible, right? So this is knowledge that can't really be explicitly defined. And I look at this as sort of a third pillar that would support databases and traditional search indexes. Databases are going to be good for retrieving facts. Search is good for finding information that's out there. But search is only going to find information that's been written down and can be expressed. These models are good at finding, just learning the things that you can't really express in instructions. They don't have to be programmed to write poetry or to generate code. They figure that stuff out. So it's allowing you to put into code things that were previously too complicated. And with that code being available in a model, that's what's allowing it to kind of deliver these benefits to the people that don't have that knowledge. Now, instead of going to a database or a search engine or having to find a person, it can just be delivered straight to you. So these are some of the, kind of capabilities, I think, that are being introduced that's making people excited. And one thing I'd like to point out with these use cases that I'm talking about is, these aren't using out-of-the-box models. So now it's time for just a little bit of a downer. which is you're going to have to do a lot of hard work. All right. I don't know anything about, the workings of those use cases that are referenced in that material, but I can bet that it took dedicated people working really hard, having to introduce new technology stacks. And so I want to explore for a second this relationship between what you can get out of the box versus what's going to be development required. And at a conference about data-centric AI, and Alex Ratner covered it really well, all the benefits. If you want to, have a use case for AI, it's going to be narrower. You're going to have to define it. You're going to have to build it. I think the best way to kind of explain it is if I'm looking at traditional NLP problems like classification and data extraction, I just need to know what type of document this is. What's the key facts about it? I don't need a model that can also write code, write poetry, and generate images. It's inefficient. It's not what you need for that use case. And so in the middle of these two things is where I think over the next years, people are going to have to figure this out, right? Because over on the left, out of the box, we've got all these big brand new capabilities. And they're going to be useful, I think, but I think the real enterprise value is going to become how do we apply those things. So you look at these data-centric approaches, the focus on smaller models, this is going to be where we actually do the work. And yesterday, I saw some really good presentations by Ally and JP, kind of showing some of the use cases that they've done to apply some of this stuff and use some of the techniques that are have been discussed here around leveraging the large models to get to the smaller models. For a variety of reasons, I'm not going to talk to you about anything we're developing at Bank of America. So we're going to focus on out of the box, all right? There's a lot of really good content on what to develop, but I want to focus on what can we do with these out of the box things. All right, so what am I talking about here? First of all, it's ChatGPT, right? We're going to talk about this. I like to describe it as the most famous model that's ever been developed. I think that this link in here does a really good job of explaining how it works. It's quite simple, right? It just predicts the next word and then does that over and over. And then DALL-E 2. I couldn't think of a good way to kind of describe. Actually, let me clarify. I couldn't find an explanation on the internet that I could steal, so I just took a screenshot of the webpage. But basically, it's ChatGPT for images. That's how we can think about it. All right. So what are we going to do with these things? All right. Well, first off, this is probably the only presentation you'll see today where the speaker has two bios about himself. But let's get to it. Okay, so here's my next slide, all right? I've been making art for, since I was born, right? You can see I've got all my stuff here. I've still got stuff from preschool. I studied fine art in college. I studied art history. And art was really kind of what got me into data science as well. Learning how to code so that I can use it to generate art was a big focus of mine. So we're going to see how can we use this stuff to make art? All right, first of all, as we went over before, this technology is going to help the lowest performers. We got to figure out how good of an artist I am. And unfortunately, the only way to judge art is by what it sells for. All right, and for the most part, it's what it sells for on the secondary market. Primary market's kind of meaningless. Most of that stuff ends up useless. So, all right. Here's a list that ChatGPT gave me of the largest art sales in history. So first of all, you would want to fact check this if you were going to use it for something important. All right, we saw a recent example of a lawyer, generating some content. It made up some cases, and I don't think the judge was impressed. I didn't read the whole article, but you don't want to use this for something that's important. Okay. Now I will go ahead and say, I recognize the first two cells. They were highly publicized, and so I know the first two are correct. The rest of them seem reasonable enough to me. I mean, if I had to guess, probably one of them is wrong, but it's not important. Point is, this is the best art ever because it's what sold for the most money, and there's just not a better way to measure it. So we got to figure out how good of an artist I am before we figure out if AI can help me. So my last painting sold for $0. Okay, so we're gonna just to establish where I'm at on this scale. And if you net out the cost of materials, it was a net loss of about probably $250, $300, right? All that paint's not free. So, look, this is the top. I don't know where the bottom is. Is negative 250 a bad return? Probably. Let's just say I'm bottom quartile and leave it at that, okay? So can the AI help me? Well, first, we got to figure out what's going on. Why is my art worth $0? And to put it simply, it's because for the last 10 years, I've been trying to paint a bear wearing a suit. Not just any suit, but early 1900s Edwardian formal wear, all right? It's a very kind of narrow slice of history that, for whatever reason, has been the focus of my art for the last 10 years. And what's important here is, how am I doing this, right? I've got these books on fashion. I've got a bunch of old magazines, a lot of reference material that I've collected over the years. And then I can Google pictures of bears, right? Because I don't have a bear. And so what I do then is I just take this information and I just put it together. And I want you guys to realize that this matters for enterprise, right? I do this all the time at work. I just take information from a couple places and then regurgitate it into an executive summary, right? I didn't create any content. I didn't do any work. I just went and picked things out and put them all together. And that's what I'm doing here. I'm picking out clothes, I'm picking out bears, and I'm mixing them together, just like when I write emails at work, right? And the problem with this is I'm not very good at drawing, right? So when they say you can master something with 10,000 hours of practice, that's an average, okay? You can actually do something far more than 10,000 hours and still be bad at it. So the technical ability to take these two sources and put them together, I don't really have it. So let's see if the AI can do better. All right. On the left is the AI attempt. On the right is mine. I think, look, it's subjective. My opinion is that, my opinion's the one that matters because it's me that's the artist here. And what I'll say is the image on the left is a better representation of what I'm trying to do with my art. That's closer to what it looks like in my head than the picture on the right. And what's really important is that because I'm bad at drawing and I have to curate all this information, creating just the image on the right takes me 10 hours to do all that work, whereas the image on the left, I can just kind of riff off of my phone and get there in about 30 minutes. I then have to paint the things, and I'm estimating that to paint the picture on the left would take less time than the one on the right because I've got a better starting point. I don't have to do all the course corrections that come along traditionally. So I think it's helping me create images that are a better representation of what I'm trying to achieve. Now, this isn't a fair comparison, though, because the picture on the left is just raw content out of the model. The picture on the right is a finished product. Dolly's been out for over a year, and I still haven't gotten around to painting the guy on the left, right? So it's a little disappointing, except that it's actually a good story where AI is helping me, right? I painted bears for 10 years, guys. I'm finally able to break free, and it's because the AI allows me to interact with it and come up with new ideas. I can explore these concepts very quickly. So over a course of a few hours, I can explore these things that you see on the screen, like sharks and astronaut sharks. And I can add these to my, to my art without having to go all this research, right? And I don't have to learn how to draw it. I can just use the AI to generate these images. So I don't have to be stuck with bears anymore. It helps me create this content. And the reason I didn't get around to painting that bear is because this is what I've been doing instead. But let's get to the next step, which is it's still just a starting point, okay? Just to be clear, I'm not a digital artist, right? My canvas is not a screen. I think that's fine for the people that do it, but I create objects. So I'm using these models as a starting point. It's a good way to fill a blank sheet of paper and then to have something to work from because, whether you're drafting an email, creating a presentation, whatever, it's very difficult to just start with nothing and create that. So this gives me the starting point, but then I'm still going to do the work here, right? And this is, I think, how you use these big generative models is for these first mile problems, right? Use it to be creative, create ideas, create a starting point, but you're still going to have to do your work. Okay, so thanks for sitting through that. Now, I promise you guys an art history lesson, okay? We're going to ask the big questions. This is what everyone comes to Data-Centric AI conference for, right? Is art created by a model art? Is it fine art? Art with a capital A, right? Okay, short answer is yes. It's a silly thing to even discuss, all right? But I want to give you guys some of the historical canon to support this idea, okay? So think about photography. It's a tool. Somebody made an invention, and then Alfred Stieglitz spent most of his life trying to validate it as fine art, and he did an excellent job. So what you need to know here is that art is not about technical mastery of a physical medium. It's not about how well you can paint or draw. It's about ideas. And so you see that through art history. You see these ready-mades. You know, that was something somebody else made, and they just signed their name to it. Pop art, you've got these collages, which are just found images. Conceptual art, a lot of times there's not even any art. It's just an idea, you know, it's just a concept. And then digital art, you know, it was similarly kind of discredited when it first came out, right? It's you know, it's on a computer. It's not a painting. Lee Mulliken is not the most famous digital artist, but I wanted to feature this painting or this picture because he's well known as a painter, and he started doing digital art later in his life, like in his late 60s, which I think is great. And also this piece, you know, like 20 years after he died, was minted into an NFT. And I did not want to leave NFTs out. They will have their place in the art history books. I don't know exactly what it'll say, but it'll be part of it. All right, so this is a nice picture, right? This is Pop Art 101. What I like about this is it's the closest thing I could figure out to trying to understand how DALL-E works, right? Taking a bunch of found images, regardless of copyright, it's taking these images and reassembling them into a new concept, which is not exactly what DALL-E does. DALL-E takes it up to another level. And, you know, because DALL-E can do styles and ideas. It doesn't just do images that it found. Anyways, I'm not showing you guys this because it's awesome, right? I mean, it is. But the point of this presentation is, can I be a better artist because of these things? So here's the next thing I have to admit, all right? I told you guys I painted bears for 10 years, and I didn't really explain why. The reason is I have no idea, okay? And this is why I'm not a good artist. This is why I didn't get into any of the top-tier fine art master's programs, because I'm not good at writing about my art, all right? I'm really lame. I'm just like, I like it. You know, I don't have a stack rank of ideas here for you, but it's the worst concept in art is like, oh, it's just cool, you know, I just like doing it. Like, it's really lame. That's okay, though. AI to the rescue. So now, right, this is what I can do. I can just say, hey, ChatGPT, I like to paint bears in suits. These are the mediums I use. This is the stuff I think about. Help me write an artist statement. And, you know, I'm not going to read these things to you, but I think it's pretty good. All right, like I wouldn't use it verbatim, but it's a good starting point. It gets me past that cold start that I've always struggled with. And it does help me see things in my art that I didn't see otherwise. And so again, this isn't something it's not deep. It's not going to go into an art history book. But for me personally, it's very useful. I can use this to think about my art, to write about it. If I were going to submit my art to a show or put it for sale on a website or something, I would use this to help me write the content to support the art. And this is something I've always been bad at. And, you know, again, AI helps the lowest performers. So here we go. I'm now medium. I don't know. And the other thing, too, is I put this little clip here from the GPT-4 question about images. I'm really looking forward to these multimodal models because describing my art and getting this is going to be, you know, that's good. That's a good starting point. But once I can actually put my art into it and then have it look at the art and give me information back, I think that's when it's going to get really powerful. So this guy, Joshua J., if you're in the audience, let me know when this is going to happen. All right. And so that's the journey here. That's the use case, is me using these out-of-the-box tools to become a better artist. Now, like I said earlier, enterprise use cases are going to require a lot of work. I think some of the same utility I get out of this as an artist is going to be the same stuff we get out of it in the enterprise. It's going to generate, you know, first mile type stuff. It's not going to go into production and operate by itself. It's going to support humans. As you get to those narrower use cases where high accuracy in production is important, it's going to start to look less and less like a giant foundation model. You're going to lose all of those capabilities of writing poems and things because, frankly, you don't need them. And so what I wanted to do here was just show you that if I can use this to help me with my art, this is accessible stuff. I think everyone can find value in it, and I would encourage people to simply go interact with it because developing a muscle memory of, how to prompt these things and what they're capable of is going to serve you well. As you look to deploy this stuff in enterprise or use it in your personal life like this, the best thing you can do is go experiment with it. And, the people that learn how to use this stuff are going to be, the winners. So thank you for your time. Thanks for coming out. And Rebecca, I'll hand it over to you.
Yes, thank you so much, Brian. There were some really fascinating ideas there, both about how AI is giving us creative starting points, as well as helping the least knowledgeable. It was cool to have your enterprise perspective on that. Thank you. We are unfortunately out of time, so I don't think we'll be able to do questions here. However, feel free to head over to the Slack. Brian will be over there for the next couple minutes, and he can answer any questions there. Thank you so much, Brian.
Thanks, Rebecca.